Intro.
14.
14 feels good. The 13 was the baker's dozen. 14 is like, it's just 14.
It's more.
All right, here's the intro. Welcome to And Also a podcast for the rest of the week. Kirk Steigler and I are here on episode 14, which I just found out is a baker's dozen plus more.
Exactly.
So we're
as
here.
All will be going forward.
And that just defined the future of the podcast. A baker's dozen plus more. We are here just to kind of entertain ourselves, really, but to discuss the previous week's sermon at Faithful Alliance Church, and we do that to kind of expand the conversation, to bring more, even though I'm normally the one preaching, to bring more of a plurality of voices to the table, because no church should ever have one primary or isolated voice. There's a little behind the scenes action for us there. But anyway, the last 2 weeks, last week was on forgiveness. Tom Jenkins, one of our elders on the leadership team at the church,
did a great job.
Did a great job. And then the previous week, I spoke on the Good Samaritan, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for reminding me what. I actually had a little bit of a brain escape there. But so all that to say is, I mean, obviously the forgiveness one is a little bit fresher on my mind. But as we kind of collect on both those messages, both in the series, what's in the middle? What's on your mind?
Both stories, both of the scenarios presented, both sermons, both lead to the same kind of place, I think. So both the Good Samaritan story, which, you know, as you pointed out, there were legal reasons why the people who passed by, the guy who got beat up, passed him by, and the Good Samaritan comes along. I just want to point out that they're labeled the singular Good Samaritan, not the Samaritan, the person from Samaria. They're just listed as the good one. So, unfortunately, the rest of them are considered bad, I guess, or just mediocre. I don't know what happened. This is
the good one. This is the okay one.
Exactly. What happened there? But in any case, that's how it gets translated to English. So, this person whose role it is in the society of the time, they were kind of an outcast in the Jerusalem culture, right? In Samaria, I'm sure they were totally cool people. Obviously, they were pretty nice since they were paying for somebody else to stay in a hotel and have their medical needs met. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But amazing and interesting to point out that they are somebody outside the role of responsibility for society in the culture, right? That there's somebody not setting the rules. They're not leaders, right? They're just the guy, the good guy, walking by, and went, "Whoa, what happened here?" And the whole time that you were saying that, I've seen this movie too many times, The Princess Bride, and all I could think of was, he's only mostly dead. So I don't know what kind of copyright infringement was just pulled by me saying that, but that's all I can think of. He's only mostly dead. Let me get him to a hotel. It's a beautiful moment. But the thing that's important there, and the same thing that's important about understanding the either 77 or 70 times 7, depending on the translation that you're reading, both of those moments involve a kind of self-awareness where you step, you see yourself as equal to somebody else, right? there's an empathy moment. So asking another person for forgiveness means that you've had to reduce yourself because you had seen yourself as above or something. You've done something that set you apart. And in order to reconnect, or even just to connect in the case of the Good Samaritan, right, in the term of empathy, you are humbling yourself and are aware of you're just as human as that person, right? You've made mistakes, they've made mistakes, you've said your thing, you've done your thing, whatever that is. Now it's time to reconnect, right? And or to even connect in the first place in Samaritan's case. Just amazing to take that time to think about that while I was driving actually earlier, because I was thinking about, forgiveness in terms of, well, we're on the road, right? Anybody who's been driving can relate to, or especially if they've been on a highway, somebody cuts you off, your, temper raises, and you're like, I can't believe that just happened. So immediately now you have set yourself as superior to this person, right?
Because I would never do that to that person.
I wouldn't do that if you do it anyway, but right, I would never do that, right? How irresponsible.
There's actually a principle for it in sociology where you think that, so someone cuts you off, that's the example, and you think to yourself, well, obviously that person is a jerk, or maybe you think out loud, obviously that person is a jerk.
Yeah.
But then someone cuts you off, obviously that person is a jerk. I accidentally cut somebody off, I'm just having a hard day. It's like, it's this kind of like unbalanced thinking about how we feel about other people versus ourselves. Like, I made a mistake, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to, I just wasn't thinking, versus obviously that guy is a mass murderer because he cut me off. Like,
wow.
It's like you offer yourself all this grace, but it's how easy is it to not offer other people the same amount of grace. So it's just interesting that you bring that up in the context of forgiveness, because I think even that story on Sunday, the parable, is all about that. Like, James says, it talks about like looking in the mirror and then forgetting what you look like when you walk away. And that story that Tom preached in Matthew 18 is really that. So this guy's forgiven of this just insurmountable debt. He walks away and he completely forgets about what's going on in his life. So then he sees the guy that owes him money, and all he can think about is what a terrible person he is because he owes him money, completely forgetting about what had just happened to him. So you talked about self-awareness, like this guy.
I always wonder about that particular moment. Like, did he actually forget that he just was forgiven? Or was he trying to impress the boss and shake down the people that owed him cash and give him, at least that much back? But, it's a parable, so who knows the pretext, right?
Right, yeah.
But it's a funny juxtaposition, a very deliberate juxtaposition. I don't know about funny, but to say that, owed some ridiculous debt couldn't, first of all, whoa, how did you get there? They didn't have credit cards then.
What were you doing?
Yeah, like what party were you planning that you crossed that threshold so fast? I mean, my goodness. But that's not the point of the story. The point isn't like this person did all these things and got in a ridiculous amount of debt.
Yeah,
they're already there. We don't know why. They landed in debt, severe debt, and then shook down people who owed them only a little bit, but they didn't have that money either. That amount was insurmountable to those people. So it's it's that moment where you have to look at yourself and go, yeah, just like what I was in, a moment ago, to reset your level, right? Back to balance. So I'm just like them. And it's when your temper rises, right? When you're, upset by something, literally upset, right? So no longer in balance.
Oh,
right. That's what that is. You've upset something. It's no longer balanced. So if you are upset by something, then it's throwing you off, and now you're looking down, shaking a finger or a fist or whatever, raising your voice, and maybe in retrospect you don't mean to. You know that wasn't the right answer. And then now, out of self-reflection later, you have to ask for forgiveness. Asking for forgiveness means you have to humble yourself and say, I'm sorry, right? I did this thing that's incorrect. And that's an important moment. I think it's interesting, how many times the parables and these moments that Jesus is trying to tell us things, it kind of gets back to the same thing over and over. It's not a very complicated message. God tries to keep it kind of simple. Started out with just 10 commandments. You've got this many fingers.
Can you
keep this straight? And then ask the rich ruler later on, as or the lawyer there, summarize everything, and he did. Right?
You get it right.
You just, there's, love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself, right? Poof, nailed it. Super simple. Now only need 2 fingers. And she's like, awesome, go sell everything. And like, yeah, exactly. You can just see the droopy face at that moment, right? Oh, oh man, I was so close. I wonder, because they don't follow up. I wonder if he actually did, because maybe he did. Who knows?
That's just it. It's almost like, like you said, there's all this pretext, and then also like post text. I don't know, well, in that case, that was a real conversation. But the parables, there's so much that we're not given, and it's almost just like, well, that's not that's not the point. Like it's that stuff doesn't matter, because that it forces you to contend with, okay, what do I do about it? I want to know what happened to the guy. And it's like, oh no, that's not, oh shoot, I have to think about what does that mean for me? It just, So let me ask you this. I'm interested in, so in the Good Samaritan, we have a lawyer, and then in the actual, so an actual conversation with the lawyer, but then in the story, we have a priest and a Levite. In the parable, we have kind of 3 tiers. I guess there's not really any hierarchy except for who owes what to who. So it's not really as laid out there. But so you're talking about the law, 10 commandments, and then the lawyer gets the 2 of them, the consolidation of those. But all throughout the Old Testament, obviously, part of the reason they can't get it right is because they keep expanding and expanding and expanding.
Yeah, they keep adding. There's a lot of Leviticus is long.
Right. They keep adding and adding and adding, and so in the Good Samaritan, when you have these three different authority figures, lawyer, priest, Levite, do you think there's anything being talked, like being stated or something that we're to understand through? And I don't know, it was only through what you were talking about, I just started to think about the characters in the story, because you're right, the Good Samaritan he's nobody. He's the Good Samaritan. Whereas everybody else, including the guy Jesus is talking to, is an authority figure of some sort. So do you think there's a statement being made about authority or power or roles, or do you think that just is neat? Those characters are needed for the story, the parable?
I think there's probably a statement about those roles, right? Because these roles are significant in the culture. The priest's job, among other duties, the sacrifices, running things in the temple, they also were to heal, right, the people. So they had responsibility there, to pray on behalf of the country so that the harvest would be good, and so on and so on. So they had a civic responsibility, but a detached civic responsibility in some ways, right? Not I am here on behalf of you. I'm here on behalf of you, plural. Right.
Right,
And
okay.
then,
yeah.
And the lawyer character, the Levite, right. Who is somebody who's got a genetic responsibility to upholding processes around the temple. They never inherited a particular plot of land in Israel, but they were given space anywhere they wanted to settle, but they had to work the temple, right? That was their role. And again, it's a group of people who their role is to talk to God on behalf of the people, to do the temple functions, to provide the everyday function, right? The whatever needed to get done at the temple, or before that and I blanked the the great tent, the tabernacle, right? So yeah, they have roles that are on behalf of the people, but are set apart from the people, right? So like a perceived holiness, a perceived elevation, right? But just as human.
Which carries them out to actually fulfill those roles in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Like they're actually justified in fulfilling those roles by not dealing with that guy. But it's this stark statement on what the mercy of God actually looks like.
Right. And to say that it's anybody and any time, it doesn't matter. Like who you are doesn't matter. Somebody like the Samaritans were people who were following traditions kind of like what was going on in Jerusalem, but they weren't quite there exactly, right? Because they were people from Babylon who had been allowed to come back and settle, and sort of Persian, sort of Jewish, not quite, right? Somewhere in the middle, but they followed the traditions, and they were looked down upon, right? Because they weren't from the group,
right?
And so they're looked down upon, socially, but still clearly the message had gotten through about how to be a good person. And so now we end up with Winnebagos driving around with signs that say, little stickers that say Good Sam Club, and from this, right? That's amazing to imagine that from a parable to some sort of group driving around the country in Winnebagos. But
was that a thing? The Good Sam Club?
Yeah, that's the thing. You can look it up. It's a group of people who help people out on the side of the road.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Never little red sticker, this little guy's face with a halo, and the Good Sam Club, it's called.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. I was thinking you said Sam's Club. I was like, what, like
no. That's Sam Walton, different group. They're doing just fine on their own. They're not actually helping anybody.
Yeah.
And then we'll get a lot of responses about that.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
And now we're on to capitalism.
Yeah. But in any case, I think the points of both those stories, we have supposed roles. We have even entitled roles, right? The Levite was entitled according to God's edict on here's what you're going to do when you get to the land.
So he did. It's not even like a self-assumed. Like it's an
entitled role.
Yeah.
But still, you have to put your tunic on one leg at a time. Right? So go help your neighbor, and your neighbor is anybody. So, have compassion, understand everybody's just as human as you. And which is not easy. It's not easy to do. But it takes a lot of time of being able to reflect on yourself, say, where do I stand on these things? How do I show that? And then understanding or trying to understand the other person and their point of view, people do stuff that's wrong all the time. We do stuff that's wrong all the time. All the time.
And that to that point, I wonder if like even in both the stories, maybe more particular in the forgiveness parable, is just that is, you know, part of forgiveness is exactly that, recognizing that given the right set of circumstances, whatever was done to you, you could do to somebody else. I mean, like, you know, have you heard of the Stanford prison experiment?
Describe it, and I might have.
It was back in the 70s, and I forgot the guy's name who ran it, but basically he brought in like 10, I'm guessing a little bit, but 10 college students, guys, men, so it was all men in their early 20s. They weren't college age, but not necessarily from Stanford. He was, and he split them up 50-50, and he made half of them, so let's say 5 prisoners, and he made half of them guards.
Oh, right, the guards. Yeah.
And over time, and again, the numbers are different, but he gave the people who had historically been the same group of people, you know, just people that they found on the street, people that they asked to be a part of this experiment, as they gave the guards authority to be guards in this fake prison, they actually started like acting like guards and showing kind of this brute force strength to the point where people are getting to the point where it's getting violent. The prisoners who were able to leave at any time, they weren't actually in prison. They're able to leave at any time, were legitimately playing. They got so like immersed in the role, and not like acting. They just got so involved in the role that they started planning a prison break to try and get out, because there was something in them that just kind of, they got lost in it, and they thought they were in it, even though they could walk out at any time. They had to if they walked out, I think they forewent whatever money they were going to make, but they weren't stuck there. And the experiment ended early because, if I remember right, there's a book about this that the guy who actually did the experiment just put out. I forget the name of it, but he said the experiment ended early because he was the guy in charge, the warden of the prison, the quote unquote prison. And he got so into the role, even though he was the professor, he was the guy running the thing. He got so into the role that he started to kind of like maneuver things to influence the guards a little bit. And finally his fiance at the time went in just to visit, and she recognized that things had gone like so awry and so crazy that she called him out on it. And he came to, and he had to end the experiment because he realized how kind of power hungry all these people were getting, all off this experiment that had nothing to do with anything. So point B, his point of the whole book and experiment is that given the right set of circumstances, in the right set of influences, you know, people are capable of really bad things. Anybody, like, it's not like, you know, it's not like
given permission.
Yeah, given permission, people. And so like I think of that. I'm actually one more thing, and I know you're on a time frame, but I was going to use this in my message and I didn't, but it's such an interesting kind of addition to it's actually about the Good Samaritan story. So they picked seminary students. This was another experiment they did, different place. They got seminary students and asked them to teach on the Good Samaritan. And they put them in one building. So they're over in one building. Let's say 10 again, just for consistency. They put them over in one building, and they asked 10 people, hey, we need you to do a teaching on the Good Samaritan story. And they sent them off kind of in groups. And one group got there on time, and one group got there late on purpose. They kind of kept them back and said, you really need to hurry. You need to get there because your time to teach is now. So you got to rush across campus. And in between the buildings, where they left and where they were going to be teaching, they put a person who had been, you know, who was acting hurt, like acting like the guy who got robbed and beaten. And the experiment one was asking the question, will these people, these seminary students who are teaching on the Good Samaritan, actually stop and help these people? And they found out that if they were in a hurry, no, they didn't. They like I think it was like 10% of the people stopped to actually help. Whereas if they weren't in a hurry, like 70% stopped and helped. So the point is that they make, now this is not a from a Christian's perspective, even though it's from a seminary, but still the point that they make is the issue isn't whether or not your heart is filled with compassion. The issue is whether or not you're on time or not, is whether or not you'll stop to help. But all
well,
that,
that's a priority thing, right? Like what did they prioritize? They prioritized getting to teach on time.
Right. And that's just it. They were so focused on getting there when they were running late. They focused on the teaching, not on the person. Mm-hmm. But all that to say is back to your point of just about like kind of, we have to humanize everybody because, there, but by the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
Like I did owe an insurmountable amount of debt in sin, but I mean, like, likewise, just, it's, we can commit atrocities to one another. And when we are sinned against, we have to be reminded of the fact that, you're right, we're human. I mean, the cross is an amazing leveler of people. We just often like to still kind of try and rise above it for some reason.
There's a really good example, a little symbology, I think, locally here in Attleboro, Massachusetts, where we are, at the La Salette Shrine. That's their logo, is the cross, and on one side is the hammer and one side are the pliers, right? And the symbology there is that we are the ones perpetually driving in the nails of sin, and God is perpetually pulling the nails back out with the pliers.
Is that what that means, really?
That's what that symbol's for, which is just, a smack in the face reminder every day of like, wow, oh, what did I do? Yeah, I did it again. Sorry. Yeah.
And it's not a self-flagellation thing.
No.
It's just a reminder of the reality of where and who we are. That there's just we're just capable of that, of just driving the nails back in all the time. And it's which only increases the magnitude through which, forgiveness is just amazing. Even the concept of God forgiving us is overwhelming, but even the concept of us forgiving one another, like, that's an amazing concept. Like, that's overwhelming.
How hugely powerful that really, really is.
Right.
Yeah. Anyone who's experienced real forgiveness for something really unpleasant that they've done to somebody else, to have actually experienced that real forgiveness from another person that you have wronged, is overwhelmingly powerful, and a hugely important thing to keep in mind whenever you feel like somebody's burned a bridge, right? Because that happens all the time, right? People all the time. There's all those moments where you're like, I'm never talking to so-and-so again because they think this, whatever that is. And yeah, or they said this, I can't believe it, awful. And then, oh yeah, wait a minute. They're going through their life too. And I made these mistakes. I'm just the same, right? So it's hard to get to a place where you can forgive yourself enough to then realize that you can forgive others. That's tricky to get to, I think, but important to get to realize, though I've made a lot of mistakes and I'm not perfect, nobody around me is either, and we all make mistakes. We can only help each other from here on. If we don't, bad things happen. And and
the best thing is to recognize just the grace of that. Hey, like, we're all the same, and we get the opportunity, like you said, we can help each other out through this, but only if we recognize that we're all the same through it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, I'm gonna end there because I know that you've got a meeting to get to. If you have not listened before or did not know, for the multitude of listeners here,
both of you,
Kirk is kind enough to give us his time throughout the day, and I'm glad for that. But the day beckons. And so we're going to end here this week. We're going to continue on over the next few weeks on what's in the middle, continually talking about relationships. Thanks for your time, and it was good to chat.